string together in order to get the stimulus that I want and then recover from it in a reasonable amount of time, which is that added issue that in the bigger picture of interval training, if we could just isolate a single bout, then we could do all kinds of stuff. But I've got to get up the next morning and train again. And so I need to think in terms of not only am I going to have a stimuli that is effective in the moment at turning on these molecular processes, but that the systemic stress that comes along for the ride, that it is not so overwhelming that now the recovery clock is really stretched out and I actually end up losing training quality and quantity the next 2 days.
This was a concept that I used to discuss a lot with Neil Henderson when him and I were working together, and it was something that was difficult to get an athlete to understand. Oftentimes workouts would be prescribed that were less difficult than the athlete could do. And ultimately what you just said was our answer. It doesn't just matter what's done today, it matters what's done tomorrow and the day after that. And you can have such a gigantic signal, say on Monday, that the rest of the week you're not gaining anything for your body. But what really matters is, what is that average, or what is that stimulus over time, because that's going to be further driving adaptation. And it's okay to finish today's interval workout feeling like you didn't go completely into the red, completely burying yourself, because ultimately what we're looking at is day in, day out. That training consistency we know is key.
We had a good thunderstorm last night, and this morning everything's all crisp and cool. Okay, so this next vlog I'm gonna dive into the metabolic fueling systems. We need to train all three. Our nutrition needs to support all three fueling systems. And I think there's a lot of confusion with terminology that causes people to make some errors in training. There's polarized training and there's pyramidal training. And you're in one camp or you're in the other.
But you don't want anything new. You just get behind a mule and plow. Now it's so different to play it, and we just don't know.
Alright, it's Wednesday and I'm trying to get ready, or starting to get ready, for a track workout today. Some tempo work on the track, lots of recovery in there to keep it balanced. This is the biggest training week I'm probably going to do all year. Big blend of a lot of base with some tempo and threshold efforts thrown in the mix of almost every workout. See how it goes. My legs are pretty heavy today.
So you can feel with something.
So 10 years ago, I returned to coaching as a job, and I did some strength training and nutrition guidance. Most of my clients in the beginning were weight loss or body transformation, and I started coaching about a year later back in the endurance world and slowly building my clientele. Meanwhile, gathering up a lot of education, certifications, national level certifications in nutrition, strength training, corrective exercise, and then swimming through USA Masters, and then of course USA Triathlon. Now I'm a level 2 with some upper end education into level 3. All right, what does that have to do with anything? Well, 10 years of education, 10 years of research, 10 years of testing things. It's about that same time that I stumbled on Polarized Training. The beauty of Polarized Training is it mirrors our metabolism. I think it's really important to understand that never do we perform a task without oxygen. It's just that at the cellular level, to produce power, we have to be able to produce some energy without the use of oxygen because it's quicker. 400 times less efficient, however, than utilizing fat metabolism and carbohydrate substrate. Okay, huge thing here to grasp. VO2 is the maximum amount, the highest volume of oxygen that your lungs can exchange with carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide, by the way, is the waste product of burning carbohydrate to its completion. Grasp that. That is to the left. If you look at that graph, now let's compare it to anaerobic threshold. Anaerobic threshold is high power output. That's what a sprinter like Usain Bolt relies on for that 8 seconds that it takes for him to run 100 meters. There is no oxygen in producing energy utilized there. That does not mean he is holding his breath. It's very limited efficiency, and there is a lot of waste. So what does that have to do with endurance training? Well, our diet needs to support those energy cycles. We're kind of like a hybrid car, if you will. At all times, we're using ATPase, which is the very fast adrenaline-like energy we produce. We're doing some anaerobic threshold stuff. And then, of course, we're utilizing both lactate and carbohydrate with fat utilization to create low intensity movement all the time. We kind of live in that state. But at all times, all 3 energy cycles are being run. Now, your body switches gears which ones become primary given the task that's in front of you. If our diet helps support that, meaning adequate carbohydrate, adequate fat, plenty of water, plenty of electrolyte, we're more efficient. And that, folks, is key, because understanding that both our nutrition and the way we train helps our bodies become more efficient, then maybe there's more buy-in to grasping polarized training. Okay, broken sets today. 4 by 400, swim, kick, pull, swim. 60 seconds between each 400. Not speed work today. It's all technique. buoys or pull paddles, they're fingerboards. Who doesn't love a Friday? Even a person who's self-employed loves Fridays. I'm not going to talk much about nutrition because it doesn't appear to be of much interest, which is a shame because it's really important. You can't train away a bad diet. You're not going to race well on a bad diet. Since the time of my undergraduate and graduate level work, we've discovered that there are different gates, we'll call them, that are on the mitochondria at the cellular level that take different substrate from that fat metabolism. There's MCT1 and there's MCT4. The reason that's really important is your body is going to do gene expression for both MCT1 and MCT4, or only MCT1, or only MCT4, or a combination based on what you take, what are your available resources, and how you train. I hope there's bells ringing in your head. If you're not doing some training near lactate turn point 2 in zone 3, you're not going to have a lot of gene expression for the right MCT gate on your mitochondria. But if you're doing all your work up there, then you're not going to have gene expression on the other one. So we got to get more efficient at both what we take in our diet so that we can support that cellular function, and then we got to train there. I think what's fun for me is I see all this banter on social media about how polarized training isn't fun. The pyramidal training and sweet spot quotes there are more fun. But is it? Because if you go out every day and try to train like that, very quickly you become medium and you stay there. Yeah, I think that's key to understanding the benefits of having variety in your workload. You have to keep making changes to change. Whoa, is that a new genism? No, but this one is, let your fast be fast and your slow be slow.
Tell me, what is stroke volume and cardiac output, and why is it so important to endurance athletes?
Certainly can. And so stroke volume, basically it's defining how much blood that we're able to pump out with every heartbeat. And so two things can really go into that specific quality, I guess we would call that. But what we're looking at is, how much the ventricle, the atrium, can fill up with blood, and how much that ventricle can sort of like preload. And then when we're going to pump out that blood, is just we want to be able to have that ventricle filled with more blood, so it can pump more blood throughout that body and get it to the muscle tissue and where it's needed.
Can you believe it? It's raining again. June 2nd, another gray morning. Okay, so we've talked about fat oxidation, the need for lactate, the need for glycogen storage so that we can do all those three fueling systems. Talked a little bit about heart health. We've talked about the fact that the high energy systems strengthen the atrium, or the upper chambers of the heart, and that the longer, lower intensity work strengthens the ventricular or lower chambers of the heart. We've talked about how your macros are an important piece to look at. You are what you eat. Remember that old saying? It's true. Now let's talk about what happens if you do spend too much time in the upper limits, aside from over-strengthening the atrium and not doing a great job with the ventricles, setting that heart rhythm out of balance, if you will. When you do too much high-intensity work, you send a signal to your central nervous system that triggers what we refer to as parasympathetic, which means all the processes that your brain controls that you do not think about. When you're tired, your brain is going to tell all those processes to slow down. And it will often be seen at rest with a lower than normal heart rate. Or conversely, you might go out for some work and not be able to perform at a heart rate that you would typically see. That's not a good sign, guys. That's an alarm bell that you've triggered your parasympathetic system with too large a signal of overreaching. The trick is to do just enough that your body can quickly do repair and then kind of come back to homeostasis, what we call the sympathetic system.
And listen, if this was something that was unavoidable, maybe we'll shift early on in the relationship when an athlete misses a day and they're like, I just push everything back a day, right? Like, no, because if you push everything back a day, then that second rest day is gone. And now we've got 5 workouts in a row.
Correct.
We can't do that. Or 5 days where we're training in a row, whether that's volume or intensity. And so that's one of the first things I'm trying to teach when this goes on. And I use good old-fashioned Catholic guilt.
This 80% and 20% at high intensity mix that's been tested in the lab. I would agree that the higher intensity work has been tested more often than the low intensity. It's really hard to get people to do the low intensity, to get your subjects who are being studied to really comply with that, because our brains are looking for that reward pathway, that dopamine punch that we get when we've done something super hard. There's this like intrinsic feeling that we have accomplished a great thing. And so overriding that pathway can be very difficult for people to mentally do. I think the third component that hasn't really been talked about is this competitive flavor. Recently, an athlete who I gave a 60-minute, very easy ride to, and the person admitted it was going to be really hard. And I said, wear a set of super dark sunglasses so you can't see what's going on around you. That can be really difficult to not want to just go away with the person that wants to go. And I think maturity in training and maturity in racing, knowing when the right time to go. My approach racing, I go when I'm hurting, because that means everyone else is hurting too. If you go when you're feeling good, chances are really great that everyone around you is feeling really good. It takes a great deal of self-control to manage the efforts, and it needs to be practiced often. What we do in practice is what we're going to do on race day. Okay, I can hear the question, well, Jen, what if I'm supposed to go hard on race day? Like I'm racing short course. Well, I mean, we do enough efforts in zone 3 and above that anaerobic threshold or lactate turn point that our bodies should be kind of primed and ready for that when it's needed. But I'm telling you, like, to learn the strategic places to do that in practice and in racing, you're going to be a much better, well-rounded athlete that's going to be hard to beat on race day. And getting enough recovery means that your body can produce more work when it's asked. Getting pretty tired of this gray wet stuff. Nasty hill. Sometimes the objective is not to kill yourself. I am soaked to the bone. First 30 minutes it rained hard. Now it's not, but my feet are wet.
That, the sympathetic nervous system stays elevated or something like that. If you're cycling, I can see running because you're doing what?
Yeah, well, you're contrasting running and cycling because the one has all this ballistic or eccentric work, so you have this mechanical load in addition to the metabolic and otherwise, whereas cycling doesn't. But the reality is a good test of this is the 3-week Grand Tour. Where athletes, the best cyclists in the world, that's the mecca, is they get to go to the Tour de France or Giro, the Tour of Italy, or the Vuelta. Those are the big three. 3 weeks, essentially every day. They get a couple of rest days, but even on the rest days, they'll cycle for a couple of hours easy just to kind of keep the system going. But what happens? Well, particularly among the domestics, the helpers who are pushing every day, they're grinding, their maximum heart rate goes down dramatically. Up to 20 beats per minute. By the end of a tour, they can't reach anywhere close to maximum heart rate that they had pre-tour, fresh. So there is pretty clear evidence that we can get this parasympathetic hyperactivity. And this has also been done in structured studies where they try to induce overreaching. And you get some that have what we call functional overreaching and some that will have a non-functional overreaching. But what we see across the board is when they're in this overreaching state, heart rate is reduced at essentially all intensities. So the brakes are on, okay? maximum heart rate is reduced, but also submax. And this is what gets tricky when athletes and coaches try to interpret heart rate responses, because heart rate can both go, you can, let's say I do a single hard strength session, and then the next day I'm working out and the heart rate's a bit high. This is very normal. Heart rate's a bit elevated. But it's also very normal. In fact, it's even more normal, according to asking 1,000 athletes, which I did on Twitter, is the more normal response is they'll say, the brakes are on, my heart rate is too low.